What's up, yo? Welcome to Your One Life. I'm your host, Kim Young Kim, and I'm super glad to have you as a listener today. If you're new here, I want you to know what this podcast is all about. This podcast is about teaching you from the greatest minds in the world, helping you in all aspects of your life, and making your childhood dream come true. As long as that childhood dream was to listen to a big-nosed Korean podcaster. Which, if it was, I recommend that you go seek counseling immediately. All right, so before we get started, I want to give a huge shout out to the musical sponsor of today's episode, which is the band Angel City Fiddle Squad. And I'll go ahead and tell you that my buddy Brian Bushway is in the band. He's the bassist, and their music is awesome. You should definitely check out their music. I will make sure to tag their links in the show notes. Now, this week's episode is about self-awareness. And for this episode, I researched a number of sources, including the work of Dr. Tasha Eurich from her TED Talk and her book, which is called Insight, and it's all about self-awareness. And based on the title, you know I'm not doing a multi-part episode on her book like I usually do. I just pulled a number of ideas that I thought were really helpful from it. But I do recommend that you pick it up to get a deeper dive on the subject of self-awareness. I also read an article from Berkeley Executive Education and a few other sources, including my own thoughts, of course. And all those resources will be in the show notes. So why is self-awareness so important? According to the experts, including Dr. Tasha Eurich, becoming self-aware leads to all of the following. You having higher levels of satisfaction, better decision-making, improved relationships at work and your personal life, doing more with the education you received, having better ideas, increased self-assurance, clear communication, becoming more resilient, managing your stress better, having much higher levels of career satisfaction, and becoming a higher performer. Now, if that's not a list of things that we universally want as a people, I don't know what is. Now, self-awareness is a very important thing, but it's actually a lot less common than we would think. Dr. Eurich's research says that 95% of people think that they're self-aware, but only about 10 to 15% of people actually are. Now, I don't know what category I fall in as far as those two groups go, but I do know that over time throughout my life, I have become more self-aware. Now, in the past, I used to have itchy skin, and I thought it was because I was going through meth withdrawals, which is weird because I don't even use meth. But I saw this as a sign that maybe I need to start. But it turns out I just need to switch my detergent to something a little more hypoallergenic. But real talk, becoming self-aware is very, very important. And when I think about self-awareness, I think about people discovering that they have a gluten allergy. And I've read up on some of the symptoms of gluten allergies, and I've read some people have like explosive diarrhea 8-9 times a day. Some people only have one bowel movement every 10 days. And the thing is, if this is what you're going through, how do you not chain yourself to the bed in your doctor's office and refuse to leave until they diagnose you? That's just crazy. But when people find out their gluten allergy, their lives change. And when you become self-aware, your life will dramatically change. An analogy I would use with self-awareness is walking around with cataracts. You can't see clearly, and all of us need to see clearly because some of us are walking around with broccoli in our teeth, and some of us are walking around with Mount Vesuvius between our teeth. And the thing about self-awareness is it's not just bad stuff. Figuring out your skills, figuring out your talents, figuring out your flow state, these are all things of self-awareness as well. And so we're going to focus on not just the good, not just the bad, but even the neutral things of yourself. And what Dr. Eurich says is there's two components of self-awareness, and here they are. Understanding yourself from within, which I would call the crazy people don't see, and how others perceive you, which is the crazy people do see. Now, the way people perceive you is not always spot on, but if they're right, it's something that you can work on. And if they're wrong, you need to figure out why you're being misperceived. And as I say this, I know some people will be like, well, I don't care what people think. and that doesn't matter to me. But let me ask you a question. Are you really saying that it doesn't matter if people think you're a thief or you're a mob informant? You're saying that doesn't matter? If that's the case, do this. Go to a party and have someone tell everyone at the party that you're there to sell life insurance. And then report back to me how that went for you. All right, so if we're going to become more self-aware, we need to figure out what self-awareness actually is. And Dr. Urich breaks down self-awareness in 7 pillars. Here they are. Number 1, your values. Another one, your aspirations. Like maybe you aspire to one day wear a wiretap for the FBI. And under aspirations, I would also add the category of interests. Another pillar is fit. And when she says fit, she's talking about the environments and people that give you energy. And for me, that would be Arby's and hipsters. And also, when she talks about fit, she's talking about the environments and people that drain you. And for me, nothing can drain me because I hang out with hipsters. Another pillar is your personal patterns. Another one being your personal reactions. Another pillar is your strengths and your weaknesses. And the last pillar she lists is your impact on others. And I think we can all agree that that's completely unimportant. So those are your 7 pillars. Now the question is, why are we not becoming self-aware? Well, according to the research and also according to things I notice, and I'm sure you notice as well, it's this culture of self-adoration that we live in, right? It's this era of good feelings, this toxic positivity of how awesome you are. And I'm not here to say you're not awesome. I think you're wonderful and you're valuable and you should love and celebrate yourself. But it feels like we're in a trend of just really self-worship, honestly. And the thing about it is, when you are worshiping yourself, it's hard to become better. And what you got to realize is you're not perfect. You do have flaws. You do have things to work on. And so do I. In particular, my sorority squad. But the problem, according to Dr. Urich, is people don't tell each other uncomfortable things in order to avoid uncomfortable feelings and confrontation. And so because of that, what we got to do is we actually have to seek out this information. We have to seek out the good information and the bad information so that we can improve. Because I don't know about you, but ultimately I want to know how I can be better. Now, not long ago, I was looking at pictures of my friend's son on Facebook. And here's the deal. My friend's son looks like Vladimir Putin. Now, I don't know him well enough to tell him this. But if my son looked like Putin, I would want to know. And then after I found out, I would have him grow out a mullet. I would shave off his eyebrows. I would turn him into a childhood obesity statistic. I would do whatever it takes to improve my son. And that's the mindset we need to have with not just our offspring, but ourselves as well. Now, if you really want to love yourself, which is what we all should do, oftentimes self-love is actually tough love. Self-love is tough love. Self-love is correcting yourself. And here's why that's important. I've heard this quote that goes something like this. If you don't correct yourself, the world and life will do it for you. And that's true. We all need to correct ourselves so that the world doesn't correct us, so that life doesn't kick us in the pants. We need to kick ourselves in the pants so that we can become better. Now, I'm going to reference something that is known as the Serenity Prayer, and this is something you probably heard in your life, but it's super important in this conversation of self-love. Here's how it goes. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, the important part of that is the courage to change the things I can. And there's a lot that you can change, and your life can get so much better than it actually is right now. Because the thing is, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. I read that in a book when I was a kid, but that is the truth. And that right there is a hopeful statement It's a statement that says you're not fixed, but you're malleable. And because you are malleable, you got to do the things in order to fix yourself, right? You got to go to therapy for your issues. You got to go to therapy for anger management. Sometimes I go to Shopaholics Anonymous, not because I have a problem though, but because it makes me feel better about myself. But real talk, you need to work on yourself. And you need to fight the current culture, which is encouraged by social media, for you to become a narcissist, for you to say, look at me now, for you to engage in all of this marketing that everybody seems to be doing nowadays. And yes, I am drowning in an ocean of self-promotion, and sometimes I'm adding to the water. And as we are in this culture of self-aggrandizing, I understand, yes, this is a game, and we're all playing in it to some degree. I get it. But behind all the face filters, behind all the smoke and mirrors, you got to work on yourself. And self-awareness is key to this. Now, in this next session, I'm going to talk about how to become more self-aware. But first, let me wrap up that last part. Learn the pillars to make you self-aware, 'cause that info will take you from here to there. You can be great if your vision is clear, loving yourself through open ears. Come on, friend, it's time to rise and fly. All right, so how do you become self-aware? Well, the good news is there are a number of different personality tests and assessments out there that will help you to understand yourself better. Now, I'm going to go ahead and list the ones that I think are most helpful, but there are some out there that I may not even have come across, and you should do your own research on the different personality tests out there. But here's my list. The Enneagram, the Myers-Briggs, also known as the MBTI, the Sparketype, the Big Five, the DISC personality profile, love languages, and also the VIA character strength survey. And I will make sure to link all those in the show notes. Now, with these personality tests, no test is the end-all, be-all, but each one of them will give you a glimpse into yourself, and if you put enough of them together, you'll get a pretty good snapshot of yourself. Now, I remember I was fresh out of college. I had just moved to Los Angeles, and I remember going to my first social event in LA. And just to give you some backstory, when I moved to LA, I was isolated for that first week because I didn't know anybody there. I actually only had one friend when I moved out there. And so this event was full of people. And I remember after leaving the event, my energy was so high. I was absolutely giddy. I was just shocked. I was like, what is the matter with me? I'm glad nobody had a camera on me at that moment, because it would have been one of those viral moments of weirdness. I was just so freaking pumped up. And shortly thereafter, I took the MBTI test, the Myers-Briggs test, and it turns out that I'm a super high extrovert. And so because I'm a super high extrovert, what I've learned is I need to make sure that I'm around people a fair amount. If I'm not, then I start to suffer. As a matter of fact, when I edit my podcast, I oftentimes go out somewhere beforehand and I interact with people. I interact at a coffee shop or anywhere else that I can edit my podcast. And the reason why I do this is because I need to keep my people energy up as I roll into introverted activities. And I do this because I know if I don't power up on people, the amount of introverting that I have to do to edit a podcast will be absolutely too draining. And this is called self-awareness. But in order to implement this important self-awareness practice, I needed to become self-aware that I was an extrovert first. So take the test, because they'll tell you how you're wired. They'll tell you about your strengths and also your weaknesses. But you need to understand both in order to thrive and survive in this world. Particularly your strengths. When you know what your strengths are, what you got to do is you got to double and triple down on these things, because your strengths are your superpowers. And you got to understand what they are. And you got to understand what puts you in the flow state. Because the happiest people are the people who are often in flow state, often in the zone. And some of these tests will help you to understand what those are. And also, you'll learn just through living your life and trying different things. Now, It's also important to understand what your weaknesses are, because your weaknesses are things that you can either delegate out of your life, but primarily they're areas of growth in your life. So you might have a problem with your temper. You might have a problem with being too vain. You might be a grudge holder. You might be an overthinker, or like some people I know, an underthinker. But these are all areas of your life that are growth areas, and you need to know what your weaknesses are. All right, so besides personality tests, how do you become more self-aware within yourself? Well, one of the things you need to do is a lot of reflecting. And as you reflect on your life, what you need to do is a number of things. You need to know how you responded and reacted and acted in different situations. You need to reflect on different areas of your life. You need to identify patterns, and you have to figure out what it is that you constantly see. And what you got to do really is you got to excavate your past. And as I excavated my past, I've noticed certain things about myself which are positive. One of them in particular being the fact that I'm a natural born promoter. When I believe in something, I tell people about it. I am a big believer in this book called Designing Your Life. I've actually printed up a shirt with the book cover logo on it, and I wear it around and I tell people about it. Besides that, if there's a worthy cause, I will wear shirts about the worthy cause, and I will make sure to be a human billboard for these things. But I've also excavated my past, and I've found things that are major areas of growth, things that I think are actually really not great at all. One of them being sometimes I stick to the plan, even if the plan is failing, particularly when I'm performing. I've done this where I've been in the middle of a comedy routine that I was doing and it wasn't working. And I just kind of was like, well, this is what I plan to do, so I'm going to stick to the script. And what I should have done in all of those instances is to completely pivot out of what I was doing, realizing that it wasn't working. And I've literally had like 3 different people come up to me and they see me bomb at one particular place. And like that never happens. Like, hey, I remember you from that one night. And I'm like, I would like to forget that night, please. But that is a flaw that I have, which is something I know I need to work on. And if you excavate your past, you'll find things like this as well. Now, going back to the book Designing Your Life, which I strongly believe in, I've actually purchased 22 copies of this book and counting. So I'm a big believer in the book. They have a number of different exercises in the book that will help you to really understand yourself better. One of the best ones is called Minding the Mountaintop, and that basically has you to go through the best moments of your life where you felt most alive, and doing that alone will help you to figure out what's going to put you in flow state and what maybe you should try to incorporate more into your life and also into your work. Now, moving on. One of the things that Dr. Urick says is you need to create a personal history log. And this could be a spreadsheet, it could be a document, and your personal history log basically breaks down decisions that you made and the outcomes that happened because of them. And as you do that, you'll see certain themes pop up, certain consequences pop up. And I have actually done this on my own before I even heard about this book, because I was curious on why many of the things that I've done haven't worked out. And I think it's really important for all of us to do this, particularly maybe Henry VIII. He probably should have done this just to realize maybe, yeah, he's the problem, right? But as I did my personal history log, one thing that I realized, one failure of mine is this t-shirt business that I started back when I was like 23, 24 years old. I was pretty fresh out of college. And as I started the t-shirt business, what I realized is I did not understand the amount of maintenance that was going to go into the business, but I also didn't realize how bad I am at doing things that require a lot of maintenance. So it was really important for me to, number one, get intel on what it's really like to do something, and also to know myself deeply. But if you do those 2 things, you are going to succeed in life. And as you do your personal history log, you're going to see certain trends that pop up over and over again. And you also might even see that you change over time, right? in the past, you might have made bad decisions, and now you make worse decisions. But all jokes aside, you might have gone from being very, very adventurous, and now you're a little more chill, or just different things that have changed about yourself. I know I've changed over the years of my life, and I'm sure if you look back on it long enough, you have as well. Also, as you go through your personal history log, what you'll see pop up more than likely is things that trigger you. Things that trigger you to do bad things, to turn to your vices, things that trigger you to lose your cool, to maybe cause you to drink, but also things that trigger you to do good things like work out and clean your house and so on and so forth. So these exercises are very, very important for you to understand yourself and to be enlightened in your personal self-awareness. And one of the things that Dr. Urich says is to do a daily check-in. This is a very easy thing to do. All of us can do this at the end of the day. It's just asking yourself these 3 simple questions. What went right? What went wrong? And how can I be better tomorrow? Okay, so what went right? What went wrong? And how can I be better tomorrow? All right, let me go ahead and wrap up that last part. Yo, you're a person with a personality. Don't walk through casually. You got to understand you never freaking rest. You got a freaking test that you got to take to understand yourself from the inside and also the out. No freaking doubt. I'm talking about your strengths. I'm talking about weaknesses. I'm talking about things that you need to be leaving at the freaking throne. That's why I'm saying you need to excavate your home, go through your past, go through the things that you have up in the back so you could go front. And that's why I'm saying you just stunt up in your life by just doing a whole bunch of digging. That's what I'm figuring. I'm talking about a life you got to design. And that's what I'm saying. Something you will find by going through your history log. And that's why I'm saying that is your job, to make a spreadsheet, make a document, and understand how you rocking in your freaking life. Look at mistakes, look at trends. That's what I send straight to you so you could come through and understand you could be bigger than your triggers when you could figure them on out. No freaking doubt. Do a daily check-in at the end. And that's what I'm saying. Straight to my friends coming off the top, talking about things that'll help your life. And that's what I write up in my rhymes. And that's how I go. And that's what I said with a freestyle flow. All right. So that's that section right there. A couple things I want to add regarding self-awareness. I read a book by a guy named Daniel Pink. It's called When. And it basically focuses on the time of day mattering and the way you're wired as far as the time of day mattering. And it's true, some people actually are morning people, some people are night owls. And what he talks about is capitalizing on how you're wired. That's very important. And also another book by him called Drive, which taps into what motivates us as people. And one of the big things that he talked about in that book is your sense of purpose. And I experienced this recently with a documentary that I was promoting called Join or Die. I experienced this over the past few years by promoting this one lady named Chaunte Lowe, who is a podcast guest on my previous podcast called Young Legends. She's a 4-time Olympian. She's also a breast cancer survivor, and spreading her message of positivity and also early detection with breast cancer and cancer in general feels incredibly meaningful even years after having her on as a guest. And it being October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, it feels fitting to talk about her in this episode. And I'll make sure to tag links in the show notes so you can learn more about her if you'd like to. All right, so moving back to the topic of self-awareness, Dr. Urich says most of us are clueless. Most of us have knowledge blindness, which is an overestimation of one's abilities in subjective things. And yes, I know that this is not the feel-good thing that you want to hear right now. But as a great woman once said, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. Gloria Steinem. Okay, so a lot of us have knowledge blindness, but we also have behavior blindness as well. And behavior blindness is not being cognizant of the impact of how our actions affect others. And this could be good, and it can also be bad. So one of the things that I do while I'm teaching, I do a lot of online teaching, is I go over motivational quotes. And I didn't realize the impact these motivational quotes were having on kids I was teaching, but I caught wind of it from another teacher who asked their students, what is the best thing that a teacher has done in a live session. And that came back more than a couple of times. And I had no idea the impact that I was having, but I was happily surprised by that. But also, I have behavior blindness in ways that I've rubbed people the wrong way, I'm sure, which I've been told of in some instances, and obviously probably not been told of in others. And we all know people like this. We all know people who are like bulls in china shops, who have no tact, who rub people the wrong way, but because people are not calling people out and not confrontational, it may not ever occur to them that that is the case. And so one of the things that Dr. York says is that you need to get feedback. The way you do this is at work. What you can do is you can send anonymous evaluations to colleagues that you work with or have worked with in the past at different levels. And you should pick people that you respect and admire their opinion, because those are the people that you would take advice from. So if you're willing to take advice from them, you should take criticism from them as well. And there is a more formalized version of this, which is called the 360 review. If you work in a company that does this, you probably heard of it. But it's essentially the same thing, just asking people who you work with and maybe even clients and customers to rate you on your strengths and weaknesses, and also to give you written feedback sometimes. But you shouldn't just get feedback from people you work with. I remember I was listening to the stand-up comedian in Atlanta, and he was talking about how people in his life are like, yo, I'm tired of my haters. I'm tired of my haters. And the guy was like, yo, you don't have haters. You're 25 years old and you work at Target, okay? Those are your parents who just want to see you do better. And I'm not bagging on people who are 25 and work at Target. That's not the point. The point is, you have to do your best and live up to your potential, right? That's what that joke is all about. And so when we ask for feedback from people we know, what Dr. York recommends is that you ask your loving critics, and your loving critics being your friends and your family members, the people who want to see you do well in life. And you do this through conversations. You can do it with a structured feedback session. You can do it all sorts of ways, but you have to be open. That's the number one thing as you do this, that you're open to the feedback that you get. Because the feedback that you get will help you to grow. And feedback, what you need to understand is feedback is a gift. I don't love it. I don't love it in the moment particularly, but I do appreciate it because that tells me what I need to work on. And I have a few friends and family members that are really good about being straight shooters, telling me stuff I need to work on, telling me when things aren't great, perhaps when I create something, but they also tell me when things are great. And the thing about it is, a true friend stabs you in the front. And that's what we all need. And a number of my friends are artists, and I feel like artists give pretty honest feedback because they realize that they need honest feedback to get better because they're not as successful as they want to be. And the only way you're going to be more and more successful and more happy, honestly, is to get feedback. So I welcome feedback on my podcast. I'm happy to hear it. The friends of mine who actually give me feedback on it, I do appreciate them. And if you want to give me feedback, please do. Maybe not a 5-hour YouTube video breaking down each sentence that I speak and a critique of how it worked or didn't work in the context of the whole episode, but I would happily receive your feedback, and I will drop my email and my social medias in the show notes if you would like to send me any feedback on this episode, the podcast as a whole, or any other episodes. But please tell me the truth, in kindness, of course. And that's the advice that she gives. Dr. York says, make it gentle and make it precise. Now, I used to have a friend of mine who lived with me who gave me the feedback, and I don't think he gave me as much feedback as he wanted to on this particular aspect of myself. But he was like, dude, you talk too much. I'm an external processor. So I externally process things, and sometimes I give too much details and so on and so forth. And he did give me that feedback. And after living together for 3 years, he got a job that was pretty far away, so he decided to move. And after he moved out, maybe just a month after that, I actually got a new coworker who was an external processor. And I had to work in close proximity with this coworker. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm like? Holy cow. I was miserable. It was so bad. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt so bad towards my friend. And I apologized. And of course, we're still friends to this day. It's all good. We're still very close. But it was just a taste of my own medicine was exactly what I needed. And that's exactly what we all need. And the reason why we need this is once I spent time around this coworker and realized how annoying I was being, I really started to work really hard on not being so much of an external processor, not being so annoying. And so that's why we need a taste of our own medicine, but we also need feedback on our flaws and also the positive aspects of ourselves. I see feedback as genetic testing for your soul, right? When you get genetic testing, all of a sudden you have a full understanding of what is probably to come, what you need to work on to take good care of yourself. And that's what we all need. We need genetic testing for our bodies, and we need genetic testing for our souls. And another reason why we need feedback and we need to become self-aware is because when you are fully self-aware, it helps you not just to get along with people, not just to move correctly throughout this life, not just to get all those positive things that I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, but it also helps you to get support. It also helps you to tell people how to support you, to help you to communicate how to get your needs met, so on and so forth. And what you don't want is you don't want to become Michael Scott, right? You don't want to become someone who is annoying in a cringy way. You don't want to become the emperor that has no clothes. You need to realize that you're not covered up in certain areas and you need to get some clothes on you. And if you do this, you will be on the road of becoming the best version of yourself. Now, here's what I know about you. You know deep down inside, you're not living up to your potential. And that's why you're listening to this podcast. Because you need the knowledge to do better, but through your actions, you need to do better as well. Because each of us are fighting the good fight against ourselves. And if you're like me, and I think you are, you want to live up to your potential, you want to become your very best, and I'm hoping that you're willing to do the work in order to make this happen. Now I'm going to end this episode with a quote from a friend of mine named Keith Cutts, who is a singer-songwriter, and this is from his song 1440, and the lyric goes like this: "Put you face to face with your evil twin when the you meets the you that you could have been." Now, that quote haunts me, and it also motivates me because it helps me to realize, yes, I don't want to live with regrets, and also I know that I can be doing better. And so I hope that you are motivated to make changes in your life, and I hope that you do take this advice to heart and you become self-aware by reaching out to people, by doing the work, by excavating your past, by talking to people who are rooting for you, and by willing to hear the good, bad, and ugly about yourself so that you can work on the things that you need to, all while celebrating the good parts about yourself. All right, that's all I got for this episode. But speaking of celebrating the good things about yourself, I would like to read a review about my podcast that was left by SS Podcast Junkie. Here it goes. I always wanted to create a podcast that would give me the key takeaways from other podcasts and or other books, and then stumbled upon Kim Young's. What I particularly love is the humor he injects, and of course the lyrics in his songs are amazing. I am sharing this a lot. Thank you, Kim Young, for being an awesome host. Thank you, SS Podcast Junkie, for leaving a review. I do appreciate that. If you decide to leave a review yourself, I may end up reading it on the podcast as well. Now, if you're new here, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss future episodes. And for those of you who've been listening, please rate and review the podcast. That helps out significantly. Again, shout out to Angel City Fiddle Squad for being the musical sponsor of this episode. I will tag their Spotify and their Instagram in the show notes. Shout out to my dude Siraj for making the instrumental for this podcast. And shout out to you for the great things that you're going to do with your learnings on self-awareness. This is Your One Life. I'm Kim Young Kim. I hope you have a great day, a great week, and until next time, peace!